Oh, hey, we are live. I still had to look up there to see if we were live. What's up, wrestling fans? Two Brothers Wrestling Show. I'm in much better condition than I was last week, and Kevin is actually, there's an actual living, breathing Kevin instead of just a picture of him this year.
Physically here.
This week.
If you didn't join us last week and thought that Doug just had my corpse out here, no. Last week we were doing our review as we do after pay-per-views, except I was calling into the show. So thanks, everyone, for sticking with us on that one. We got a lot of good feedback. We knew that having an at-home perspective as well as an in-person perspective would be a unique spin on what we normally do. What we didn't know is whether or not it would work.
So, right.
Had no idea if we were going to be able to keep signal that long or if what the sound would be like, but it turned out really good. So thanks, everyone, for hanging in. We got a more traditional show for you tonight. In our main event, Doug, we're talking draft, everything to do with WWE
draft. Man, I'm not sure about this draft already.
Concerns. If you do, let us know what they are, because we want you to chime in. Let us know what you think so far and what you think may happen tomorrow night on Raw. But Doug, before we get to the main event, as we do,
hold on, I've got a completely different setup now. Things are in much different places. There we go. Opening bell. Cameras here, screens up there. Everything's are just all over the place.
All over the place. Well, I'll tell you the place that Royal Rumble is going to be, Doug, because that's where we're starting the news at tonight. It's going to be the biggest venue in the history of the Royal Rumble. This past week, WWE announced that St. Louis is going to host this year's Royal Rumble at the Dome at America's Center, and that's going to take place on January 29th, 2022. The Dome is the former home of the St. Louis Rams NFL franchise. Before the Rams left St. Louis, that's where they'd have their games. For football, it held 67,277. So obviously you can imagine with people on the field, you're going to be able to fit more in there for a wrestling show. By far, it's going to be the largest possible attendance for a Royal Rumble in the history of the event. Another thing to note, though, about that January 29th date is much like SummerSlam this past August, this event is going to be taking place on a Saturday. AEW, of course, has done Saturday pay-per-views. Of course, they only have 4 or so a year. But WWE is apparently following suit. It looks to be, in a lot of ways, that wrestling promoters are trying to move away from just being exclusive to Sunday night events. The problem for wrestling is it's hard to find a Saturday that is not taken by UFC, boxing, or some other very popular sporting event on pay-per-view. Speaking of which, moving to our next topic, AEW announced that their next pay-per-view, their November pay-per-view, Full Gear, is going to take place in Minneapolis's Target Center. Now, this show was originally announced for Saturday, November 6th in St. Louis. But just like I was saying, Saturdays can be really tough for wrestling to not have competition. Competition was so stiff for that original date. There's a UFC has a loaded show coming from Madison Square Garden that night. One of boxing's biggest stars, Canelo Alvarez, he's going to be fighting from Vegas that night on pay-per-view. So rather than face that kind of competition, AEW decided just to move the date to 1 week later. And also that forced a change of venue, change of cities. So instead of the 6th, your next AEW pay-per-view, the November pay-per-view is now going to be taking place on the 13th. Moving on, Doug, the Forbidden Door is now benefiting independent wrestling and not just the big guys in the other promotions that aren't under Vince's umbrella, but Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, which is renowned as one of the best independents on the independent wrestling scene. One of the biggest promotions you'll find that does not have a weekly TV presence somewhere. But Pro Wrestling Guerrilla this past week, they crowned their new tag team champions. The titles have been vacant for a very, very long while now. Just to give you an idea, Doug, as to how long these PWG tag belts have been vacated, the last champions were the Rascals, now known as MSK in NXT. So that's been a bit of time that those belts have been vacant. But I don't know. Have you heard? Did you hear who won the tournament?
I have not. I was gonna interject though. Didn't Mox take their world title from the former Zack Ryder? God, his name is escaping me right now. But didn't Moxley recently take the PWG world title?
Oh, did he? Now that I did not know.
Maybe I dreamed that, but I thought that Mox and Zack Ryder had like like some sort of like like death match kind of showdown, and Mox was their new. Maybe there's something leading to that, or maybe I misunderstood what I was processing. Been through a lot lately, so
it very well may be, because those forbidden doors are swinging open every which way now, because your new PWG tag champs are the Kings of the Black Throne. Doug, you have any idea who the Kings of the Black Throne might be?
Who are the Kings of the Black Throne?
So it is the team of Brody King and Malachi Black.
Oh.
So yes, a Ring of Honor wrestler teamed with an AEW wrestler to win the tag titles of an independent promotion that doesn't have television. So, 2021 is a great time to be a wrestling fan.
I've got to look this up. PWG champion right now.
Look that up, because it really is kind of amazing that you can have one of the mainstays of Ring of Honor there and
I'm not sure why I'm trying to do this on my phone. I have much larger screens everywhere. Hold on a second.
Well, you're doing that.
I'm going to look this up now.
While you're doing that, I'll move on to the next bit of news, and that is that on this past week's edition of Impact, they announced a new championship that they're bringing to the company. It is the Impact Digital Media Championship. It's their newest title. Single elimination tournament is set to begin this week to determine the inaugural champion. That's going to be eventually settled. I guess the finals will be at their next pay-per-view. It's primarily a title that's going to be defended through the promotion's digital social media, as well as their Impact Plus streaming platform. So I'm not sure what I think about the name, the Impact Digital Media Championship, but I guess maybe there was a time way back, decades ago, that the idea of a TV champion sounded just as strange. I guess it makes sense from a, just a strategic point of view. I don't know. It's going to take me a while to get used to calling someone the Impact Digital Media Champion.
I don't know. Digital Media Champion sounds like a title you would carry at your current job. You're the reigning, defending Digital Media Champion.
That might actually be my title now. I don't know. I probably should check. Oh, speaking of Impact, Doug, we have some signings to announce in the world of professional wrestling, and we'll start by someone who was a standout at Impact forever. Kiera Hogan is now officially signed to AEW. I know we've seen her on AEW programming for many weeks now, but she was doing so on a per appearance basis, but it is now official. She signed the deal, and so great for AEW. Another a way to bolster that women's division, as Kiera Hogan is really fantastic in the ring and is extremely charismatic on the mic. She's not had as much chance to show that at AEW yet, but now that she's a contracted wrestler, I imagine that she might. AEW has also come to terms this week with the very talented Lio Rush. For those that didn't see this week's editions of AEW programming, you may have missed that Lio Rush, who's been a little bit of everywhere, Ring of Honor, MLW, WWE, NXT for a while. Hopefully, though, Rush doesn't have the same type of issues that have dogged him in other federations and throughout his career. Hopefully those are past him now, and he has a nice smooth transition into AEW, because he is electric in the ring. And then the last talent signing I'll mention is that Ring of Honor has come to terms with a contract for Trish Adora. Adora was a standout in Ring of Honor's recent women's title championship tournament. She made it all the way to the semifinals. And Doug, I'm happy that Trish Adora is signed. Have you seen her?
I have not, no.
So then you don't know what her finishing maneuver is then, do you?
No, what is it?
It's the Lariat Tubman. Exactly, right? So we get to hear Ian Riccaboni call the Lariat Tubman more, which just makes me very, very happy. I love clever wrestling finishing moves like the Devil Inside and all that kind of great stuff. This is my new favorite, the Lariat Tubman, coming to a Ring of Honor television more often for you folks. And then, Doug, I'm going to end with this, and we'll see what you found out about the PWG title. But the last thing I'll mention for the news in our opening bell segment is just a congratulations to Ronda Rousey and her husband on the birth of their first child. That's happened over the last week. Ronda left WWE following WrestleMania 35 all the way back in 2019 with the stated intentions of starting a family. And, last year investors were telling stakeholders there in WWE that Ronda would be returning to WWE shortly. And of course, shortly after they said that in an investors meeting, Ronda announced her pregnancy. So hard to say when what this extended family now means for Rousey's in-ring future, when or if she'll return. But regardless, congratulations to Rousey and the entire family.
Yay. Babies. Okay, so I misspoke. It's not the PWG, it's the CZW championship where Mox showed up. But again, I think it proves to your point that, the Forbidden Door is kicking down everywhere since John Moxley is the current CZW champion after defeating Matt Cardona. Our former Zack Ryder. So that was in September this year. So Forbidden Door is getting kicked down everywhere.
It's very much in line with the news I had earlier about, Ring of Honor and AEW coming together for a tag team to take an independent tag team championship. It's obvious how AEW and Impact and shows like that have benefited from talent exchange. But, for years, if you worked for Vince, you could only work for Vince. That was it. Right. Whether you're classified by the government as an independent contractor, we all know there was no independence to that. Impact and the other promotions had a little bit of a different take. You could work your indie dates just as long as it wasn't broadcast or on air. So, it still came with restrictions. But now we're seeing a way much looser environment so that not just your big names are benefiting, but independents are benefiting too, because these truly independent contractors are being allowed by their home promotions to go out there and let us know what you're doing and don't harm the character and be back here for TV. Don't get hurt, but right. Everyone's benefiting, and obviously it's good for all involved to get that kind of publicity for your promotion. So very exciting time to be a wrestling fan.
Absolutely. Whatever's best for business. Best for business.
Well, speaking of best for business, Doug, you ready to see about this draft going on?
I hope so, because I've already clicked the main event button and brought the banner up. So
then let's talk main event.
Oh my goodness!
WWE draft. We're halfway through. Well, maybe not really halfway through. Technically, I guess we'll have 3 hours tomorrow, and most of the picks are going to come tomorrow. But the WWE draft, the 2021 edition, started on Friday, continues on Monday. Doug, before we get into any of the picks, I just would maybe set the stage by talking about a few differences just on the draft process. I don't know, and you can correct me if I am wrong and just misremembering, but I don't remember such a long lead time between being drafted and actually showing up on your new show. In the past, it was either immediate after you were drafted, you go to the show, or oftentimes whatever the next pay-per-view was, if you were booked for a match, you'd still have that match, but it still was pretty much immediate as far as when you reported to your new digs. None of these draftees, none of this takes, real shape for 3 weeks until the day after the Crown Jewel event in Saudi Arabia. So we're 3 weeks away before any of these draft picks actually show up permanently on their new programming home.
So here's the thing, man. I've come to the conclusion that WWE runs all of their programming the way I run my part of this show. It is just a wing and a prayer. Show up a couple of seconds before go live, before showtime, and just dive right in with no real plan other than an outline from you. You being creative, me being Vince McMahon, I just come in and plow through. And I'm pretty sure that's the way WWE does it too, because there's no consistency at this point, even year to year. Because, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this the first time in draft history it is more beneficial to not be drafted? Because if you're not drafted, you get to go wherever the hell you want to go. So it seems the and maybe this is good for a storyline then, because somebody who doesn't get picked then goes to like the A show, which is now SmackDown for sure, ends up going to SmackDown and making them name for themselves, and maybe you work a story arc like that. But again, I think I'm putting too much faith in long term booking with that, and the more that we're just shotgunning it and just going through it. But that's my
See,
little rant right there about that.
I find the draft usually pretty entertaining. I think the idea to shake things up every once in a while is good. Um, I don't know. I mean, I'm actually fine for you have 3 weeks to finish out what your business is. I'm even fine for that. At least it's defined and like letting us know, hey, these changes are taking place on air, but they will not take effect until October 22nd. What is a little more confounding to me that I don't like is the ambiguity of us being able to analyze, or fans at home being able to like take a lot of stock in like, oh, first round draft pick, because half of the roster was available to be drafted on Friday night, while the other half is only available on Monday night. They didn't tell us which half. Like, who is available? Am I available for the draft? Are you available for the draft? Or are you on Monday night? Like, how can we
making it up as they go along? For
how
real.
can we decide if someone got snubbed, or someone can brag, hey, I was the overall top draft pick, if half the roster wasn't available, which is, again, fine if you let us know in advance. This is the pool. Show them backstage like you used to. Here they all are sitting, waiting. These are the folks that are available tonight. And these, if you don't see them, then, that means they're Monday night folks. It makes it a little hard to invest in the choices being made when you're really not sure who's even eligible.
Man, and then there's the drop, the Saturday drop. So I'm imagining we'll also get a Tuesday drop of a bunch of people that didn't get any airtime. And I guess in that Tuesday drop this time, just like the Saturday drop with all these Raw and SmackDown drafts that came about, I wonder if we get and also these people who weren't even drafted have now chosen to go here or go there, or maybe somebody goes back to NXT. I think that would be great. So some talent maybe goes back to NXT, since we're bringing some NXT talent up.
I would say that there's a good chance that the draft will continue on Monday night, and they'll do like the Saturday drafts came after Friday night SmackDown, but they have that Talking Smack show that airs Saturday mornings. Wouldn't surprise me if they tune in to Talking Raw not Talking Raw Talk after Monday Night Raw, and the draft will continue. They might use that as a push to get people over to the Peacock platform, because Peacock.
Because Peacock is such an excellent platform
we got
the network.
We got to sell some State Farm insurance, so please turn over and watch your other draft picks that you're not sure what importance they hold. But we're not going to go over every single pick, Doug, but I wouldn't mind going over those in the first round, at least all those in the first round. So, round one, Roman was your first overall pick, and then Big E was your second. So, your main titles stay put. To me, that just is logical. So I'm actually thinking that was a really smart way to start. But, of course, if you had the top pick for your show, who wouldn't pick Roman Reigns? And then if you didn't get Roman Reigns, who wouldn't want the other world champion on their show? So that was one I think WWE actually got right, to do that logically like that.
But when it came to the women, then, you're Raw, you bring Charlotte.
Yeah. She was the first overall women's pick. That's also first round.
Right. First round, Charlotte gets pulled to SmackDown, because I agree with you. Let's get our champions, and Raw and SmackDown both kept their respective champions. Cool. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Then SmackDown cherry picks Raw's female champion.
Yep.
Not their own.
Yes.
Not their own.
So Bianca was the first non-women's competitor to be drafted, and that was Raw reacting, I guess, and instilling a SmackDown superstar. Now, like you, at first, I thought this first round was a bit of an insult to Becky and the women's champion. However, later on that night on commentary, Becky made it clear she wasn't available to be drafted and wouldn't be till Monday night. So that goes back to my earlier point where when you don't know who's even eligible, at least she let us know she wasn't eligible. But if you hadn't caught that little bit, it would be easy to just be looking at these picks and go, hey, wait a minute. Didn't they just slight Becky?
So again, this makes no sense because it sounds very free and loose, and the rules are what they are. It's like that wild card rule from like a year or 2 years ago, back when wrestling you could go see wrestling shows before the great global disaster happened. Because I think you were at a wild card show, like a Raw show, right? Where the wild card like took place or something, and it made absolutely no sense that you didn't know who was eligible, who wasn't eligible, who could travel back and forth between shows. It's the same thing here. They're using wild card logic with their people.
The first thing I put in my notes was, wow, what a terrible slam to Becky that your show doesn't pick you or the champion, and then the competition has a chance to steal you away, and they don't pick you either. And then later on, she made it clear she wasn't eligible. But not everyone had a mic that night to make it clear that, hey, don't worry, I'll go on Monday. So that's where it would have been extremely beneficial for those trying to enjoy the draft at home, as look into it as a real drafting sports-like event, to have way more defined rules than that, because that made that choice a little bit of a mess until Becky herself provided the explanation. I don't know if in the headsets they said that, you better clear this up, or if she, being a smart hand who has a lot of, control over her character, realized, this isn't going to make any sense unless I explain it to the folks at home.
Yeah, and I really wonder if that was like a creative audible on the fly of, well, okay, this does look really bad for Becky.
Yeah.
Let's protect her and actually, get this rule out there that makes no sense.
My thoughts were the same as you at first. It's like, that is just a horrible slight of Becky. You wouldn't pick your own champion if you had a chance to go first. So that's definitely a on WWE for not having clear rules defined ahead of time. But round one, for the most part, and it's hard to argue with the choices. It makes a lot of sense, the way they did it based on who was and who was not available. Looking at round two, one thing I'd highlight for that is that Drew McIntyre is moving to SmackDown. So in some ways, I see a second round pick for Drew as a bit of a slap to Drew after being the central part of Raw for much of the last 2 years. That he didn't go until the second round, and obviously he was eligible to be drafted. I do like the move, only because I think that maybe the reason he's sort of stalled a little bit on Raw is that he'd been at the top for so long and kind of ran through the challengers there. I think it's going to be a fresh start for him on SmackDown. And we have seen, at Survivor Series several years ago, just a taste of what a Drew McIntyre Roman Reigns match and program could be like. So I'm excited to see maybe that pick up at some point down the line now that he's on SmackDown. Do you like that move or not?
Absolutely. I do like this, but I don't see it as so much of a bad for Drew with this pick, because there are four people who could be picked, and equality being what it is, they did 2 guys 2 gals first round, and everybody went for gold except for Bianca, who is gold. So
true that.
So you're bringing Drew over to SmackDown. I do like that a lot. That gives a lot of fresh opponents. I like that. There's other moves here in the second round I do not like at all, though.
Well, looking at some of those, RK Bro obviously stayed on Raw, and that kept the Raw tag titles there. New Day to SmackDown. So Big E's reunion with his New Day brethren. How brief that was. Edge to Raw. Are you fine with that?
I'm cool with that. It's that New Day to SmackDown, man.
That was the one that stuck with you as a. Yeah.
Come on, you're come on. It's like breaking up the Hurt Business all over again.
I don't know if the WWE thinks that New Day can't be funny, and then when they need to be, turn on the seriousness, because they showed. Big E shows that he can, and there's part of me that thinks that they believe that if they keep the rest of New Day away from Big E, that they could focus on the serious and not on the pancakes kind of stuff. But I think fans are more sophisticated than that. And that Big E, when he wants to get serious, shows that he can. He doesn't have to be with them every second, but having a little faction behind a face for a change, I would have been really happy to have them stick around.
I'm all for that. I mean, I think you've seen factions and stables function. I mean, I think about New Japan. New Japan almost has like those. I don't know what it's actually called with the UFC, where they have the fighting camps.
Yeah,
you have these stables. Yeah. You have these stables of individuals that are together, but they'll fight each other if they have to. and babyface or heel, I can see you still having those camps. It doesn't mean they're all intertwined all the time and up in everybody's business. I mean, look at what AEW does with the Inner Circle now. The Inner Circle is still a group. They're still a collective. They're not all in everybody's business. Everybody's doing their own thing. I'm pretty sure the Pinnacle in AEW is still a thing too, but everybody's doing their own thing. There's still a group. You can do this with stables, maybe a little bit harder with New Day, but you get it out there and get ahead of it and start.
Obviously, though, they've never cared to, when it's pay-per-view time and both rosters come together, they don't care to show them backstage hanging out. I mean, the world knows their history and that they're real life, really good friends like you. They don't have to be with them every second of the show for it to still be on the same show and be seen together, traveling together, dressing in the dressing rooms, preparing together, talking strategy together. I don't get that either. And I don't see why they needed to be moved. I mean, there's still plenty for them that they could do on Raw, part of which would be to enhance Big E and his run. So very strange. Another thing, Doug, I'd like to highlight about round 2 for me that sticks out is that round 2 is, unlike a lot of years where sometimes NXT talent is available, sometimes it's just Raw and SmackDown. This year they made it clear, at least they did make it clear in advance, that NXT talent would be eligible as well. And the first NXT talent taken in the draft was Hit Row.
Yeah, they were.
SmackDown.
Price just went up.
I mean, it shows how highly Hit Row is thought of since they're relatively new. But, I think they're one of the more unique factions that WWE has. They're cool, which is something that WWE has a tough time with for face teams, especially, is to make them actually, cool. They have a swagger to them that just seems like they're allowed to be enough of their authentic selves that it comes across. So where I'm going with this, and I'm sure it's your fear too.
Oh yeah, they're totally screwed on the main roster. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, their price just went up. However, they're going to get like the sanity treatment or something worse, or like Gladiator, like Karrion Kross.
Yeah. I think Karrion Kross got Farouk's old leather Gladiator wardrobe there. I'm afraid too that Hit Row will either get toned down, or even worse, if they get shifted into a bunch of, I hate to say it, but to be clear, a bunch of white WWE writers that think that they can do comedy, and that they'll go from being edgy and hip to corny or forgotten. So I love Hit Row. I understand it that of all the NXT talent, especially with so much new talent now that NXT has, they're probably one of the more polished, ready for prime time groups they have. So on the surface, the move makes a ton of sense to get these guys on Fox. Where I worry is the execution of
yes.
that move.
Yes, because WWE is not the excellence of execution.
Not when it comes to NXT talent. I mean, it really is a very spotty history, and so I worry. And speaking of that, Doug, unless you have anything else about round 2, I will move around to some third round highlights for me.
Yeah. Bro.
So Keith Bearcat Lee stays on Raw, and Austin Theory gets drafted from NXT to Raw. So first, I'll say I'm surprised to see Keith go this high, considering how stop and go his push has been. As we were just talking with spotty NXT call-up history, right? The way that Keith Lee's been treated on the main roster. But
wasn't Austin Theory already called up and then sent back?
Well, here's the thing. So with Austin Theory, what made me, yes, he came up during the pandemic and very briefly, and then was back. But Austin Theory's call up means two things. One, it probably means the way is being broken up at NXT. But two, it's not like Austin Theory is a huge star there. I mean, he's a great worker and has a lot of talent, but he was more of a side character at NXT. And so the fact that he gets pulled alone up to the main roster, that, I don't know, it sounds like a Humberto Carrillo kind of situation to me. One of those, like, man, a really talented guy who's going to come up without get stripped of his character in this faction that he's in, and probably just going to do jobs to big guys.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all the talent in the world, but that one's very surprising.
They make him a mouthpiece for Bearcat Keith Lee.
I mean, yes, I'm happy for Keith to get drafted so highly, and hopefully this means that somebody will get behind him. I'm really kind of, not really sure why he needed the nickname, but it doesn't bother me that they gave him a nickname. A nickname's not a character per se, and there is a historical background to that nickname that Keith Lee could probably dig into. It's really not the nickname that's the problem, it's the push, and that's going to be the same problem for Austin Theory. And to be fair, Austin is a great talent. He does not have the refined, like, on-screen time that Hit Row has had that would give me confidence that they can transport his current gimmick and have it work. If they do that with Hit Row, it's still going to work. For him as the comedy sidekick, that's not going to be possible in its current incarnation by himself. So I don't know, what do they do with Austin Theory on Raw of all places?
I don't know, but that does have me thinking. What are the rules for the draft anyway? As far as Hit Row is what, 4 people?
Oh yeah.
So you can with one pick you can grip four talents, right?
Or if you get like a Happy Corbin, you suddenly get like I don't know, Mossback Ross, whatever they're calling him.
Wait, hold on, I'll do somewhere. Madcap,
yeah. I mean, in the past, they have stated in advance that tag teams will go together, but then in the past, they've split up tag teams. So This is, like, to your point earlier, where they make it up as they go along. I would take 4. I would take that bet. Give me 4 guys to you taking 1 from me. Sure. Yeah, I'll bet on 2 of those being stars. So that is where it gets a little strange. Other things in round 3, Doug, the Mysterios move over to Raw, which is, whatever. I think might be fun for them. Jeff Hardy is moving to SmackDown, which, again, legacy act that's extremely over, I realized, with a live crowd, as I saw last week at the pay-per-view. So probably fine for him too. I don't know that's any of that's really big news. But as you mentioned earlier, Doug, there were, additional picks that were announced over the weekend on Talking Smack. And with those, Reggie stays at Raw. So Raw basically did that to keep the comedy of the WWE 24/7 championship going. Other big, I guess, notable news. Most of those were really minor moves, but if you want to talk about notable and former champs and stuff, moving brands, Apollo Crews, former Intercontinental Champion, is stolen away. Otis and Chad Gable and Zelena Vega also going to Raw. Zelena's kind of lost on SmackDown. I don't think it'll get better for her at Raw. And Otis and Chad, maybe, I mean, they'll do, they're sort of mid-card tag team now, but maybe they'll get more room to breathe on a 3-hour show, but I don't see that either. SmackDown-wise, they picked up Aaliyah from NXT, which to me is very similar to Raw taking Austin Theory in that she's not a big player on NXT herself, so it seems a little odd. But also notable is SmackDown stole away T-Bar while Mace stays on Raw, which I guess means they're breaking up that tag team, which, I think there's was a lot of potential never realized in that tag team. But if it gives these men better gimmicks and maybe even better names, God, let's hope. But my bigger worry is that both these men split apart and not a part of a tag team are just going to get also lost in the shuffle.
I totally agree. There's a lot of things to get lost here in the shuffle, but going back to Aaliyah, this girl is a major heel talent. She's an
Yeah.
excellent heel, and I don't think that she is going to get lost in the shuffle. I don't think she's going to be able to shine as the heel that she is. You know, it took me seeing her live at NXT, the NXT in Columbus we saw, to get her over with me because the girl was great as a heel.
Yeah.
That's old school heel work that she was doing. It was great, and I hope she can bring some of that to the main roster. But I got a bad feeling about that.
Got a bad feeling about it myself. Um, we're halfway through, Doug. Predictions for Raw. I think that, it just makes sense since she wasn't available. Apparently, I'm not one. Becky has to go to Raw, doesn't she, as the first overall pick?
Absolutely, absolutely. Becky has to go to Raw.
And one, I mean, not just because of, yes, that makes sense, but you got to have some parity with the championships. We said it was made a lot of sense for both Raw and SmackDown to pick, Roman and Big E respectively. A lot of times WWE in the past in these drafts has used storyline as a plot point, basically, for the intrigue into these drafts is like stealing someone else's champion. So you can't have two women's champions on Raw. Or on SmackDown rather. So yeah, Becky, even if it wasn't Becky, whoever was holding that title would have to be the person I would think that Raw would take the second that they have their first pick.
Yeah, I agree. And another major storyline coming out of SmackDown is the Usos remaining having to go to Raw. But you're not breaking up the bloodline. You're not doing that. I mean, Naomi's staying on SmackDown. WWE in the past has made efforts to keep married couples together so the travel is easier and it's just easier on the couple. So, kudos to WWE for that. But I think they've also not went out of their way, but when it's convenient for them, also sent couples to different shows and completely screwed up traveling schedules. But I think the Usos are in a position now where they have a little bit of stroke. So with Naomi already on SmackDown, I do not see the bloodline breaking up and leaving the tribal chief with nobody, unless they freshen them up with put them with Hit Row or something.
Wouldn't mind seeing that, but yeah. I mean,
Right.
even if the WWE wasn't doing it out of the goodness of their hearts to keep families together, storyline wise, the bloodline business is still, going well. So you can't you can't stop that story from moving forward the way it's going to move. Somebody's got to turn on somebody at some point. Somebody's going to have to push somebody in the family too far. I mean, there's just way too much juice still in the orange for them to split these guys up. So yeah, I think the predictable things for tomorrow night for sure is Becky to Raw and the Usos stay on SmackDown. But because of that, and because RK Bro has already been, staying on, Raw, and they do like to use title flops as like, oh my gosh, we got two champions on this one show. I think since none of the secondary titles have moved yet, I think that there's a good chance we see our Intercontinental and U.S. champions switch shows, which means King Nakamura brings his act over to Raw, and then Damian Priest moves to SmackDown. Neither of them have a long-standing feud that hasn't already been settled going on right now. I actually would be happy for both of those moves because I think it would give each a whole fresh round of opponents that they could, start wrestling against and freshen up both belts. So I think that that's something that something that we'll see tomorrow night.
Man, remember when Nakamura was really, really awesome? remember that? Remember those days?
Dude, he never before had Rick Boogs playing guitar as he came down to the ring. I mean, how much more awesome can it get than that?
How excited were we to hear that AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura and the Good Brothers were all leaving New Japan to come to WWE? How excited were we to see that Nakamura AJ Styles Part 2 in a WWE ring?
Yeah, it did not quite happen the way that everyone thought it would.
We still to this day not got that. I mean, it's a different style.
So speaking of things that probably won't be as cool as they should be, we've already talked Hit Row and Austin Theory. When we talk predictions, who else from NXT comes up? Because to me, you look at this, you think that, before he left for AEW, like your Adam Coles and your Johnny Garganos and your Tommaso Ciampas, and there's an older guard there that you would think they're ready to make the move up. They've been waiting their time. Obviously, with these first couple of picks, they've gone way younger than those veterans. Not the new kids that are just showing up every week on NXT being introduced, but also not the veterans that are probably have been there waiting for a while to, if they wanted to come to the next stage. So to me, Aaliyah and all these folks make it seem like that's the well they're drawing from, not the folks we're still introducing, obviously, but also not the folks you might expect are ready to move on. So any thoughts as to who may be the NXT, the next to move? Would it be like a young veterans group or a Pete Dunne type that's, maybe not?
That's what I was going to say. The one that sticks out is Pete Dunne. I mean, I'm a huge Pete Dunne fan, and I think he would be great on either show, but I can see Pete Dunne going to Raw. I could see that.
So I can also see, for very similar reasons, Walter going, because what more do you do with Walter? He's been the NXT UK champion forever, and he hasn't been seen since he lost the NXT UK title. You could move him on to NXT proper the way that Dunn and others have done in the past, but I don't know, especially with their real youth movement they got going on, that he's not one that wouldn't just fit in size wise, style wise, character wise. You plug him into Raw or SmackDown. If you don't mess him up and let him go, and he would get over.
Absolutely. Gargano, right now we've got Ciampa with the title. I think Gargano needs to stay with Ciampa, not with Ciampa, but needs to stay in NXT to kind of bring up a new guard, because there's a lot of new kids. So I don't see Gargano being called up. I'm not sure how he would be treated on the main roster anyway. We had that brief thing where he and Ciampa flirted with it, but eventually ended up going back to NXT. I think those are two talents that need to stay at NXT to usher in a new era at NXT.
Well, obviously they're breaking up, or at least breaking off the way by letting Austin Theory go. Candace is going to be going on maternity leave at some point.
Exactly. So, Index is
Index is so over. It wouldn't surprise me if someone at their level that's not like, hey, we're just introducing them, but they're pretty fully formed as characters. Johnny could take some paternity leave. I don't think he moves either, because it personally would be a bad time for him to move and hit the road. And I don't know that he wants to.
Exactly. And I think his contract's coming up too soon. So
yeah, I'd say an Index, a Pete Dunne, a Walter, watch for those names. Or they could do kind of like they did with an Austin Theory and maybe just pick somebody we're not thinking that for whatever reasons they may have to bring a certain talent up, maybe to give a new gimmick that's going to just, completely ruin them. But let's hope not.
Or they could do something really crazy, like bring up, what's his name? Gosh, Braun Breaker. Let's call it Braun Breaker to the main roster. Oh, I'm fantasy booking now, but Braun Breaker, we drop that stupid name. We call him Rex Steiner. We let that heritage shine. We feed him people like they did Goldberg to hide his inefficiencies in the ring, and just start feeding him people and build him like that until he goes after Big E and takes that title, say, Royal Rumble. There's some fantasy booking right there. That's something that would generate, excitement for this geek anyway.
So, Doug, while you're doing your fantasy booking, it's a good time before we move on out of this. I'm sharing my screen here. Folks, last year at this time, Doug and I did a mock draft the last time WWE did a draft. And as part of that mock draft, what we did was we went back and forth and looking at the current roster at that time of a talent available and who we would pick for our respective brands if we were building and fantasy booking our own promotions. Doug, let's take a look at this list here real quick.
I'm seeing who on my list is still employed.
So actually, if you look at both of these, we didn't do too bad. Roman and Drew both had really good years this last year. And Roman went high in the draft and to not have a title. I think Drew went pretty high in the draft. AJ Styles is now really more of a singles wrestler. A tag wrestler. Talent is still there. And he's still focused regularly. Naomi, your second overall pick, she's been kind of lost in the shuffle. Do you think she gets involved? I know she was drafted and is staying on SmackDown. Do you think that they make her real family ties a part of the storyline eventually to add some extra intrigue to it?
I think, it seems like they're working something with Sonya Deville with her, so I'm not sure where that goes. Or maybe they do swing that back into, the tribal chief takes care of his family, takes care of the bloodline, and maybe flexes and gets something done. I don't know. We'll see about that. I'd love to see Naomi shine, but she's definitely been lost. We'll see.
Well, I had Sasha and you had Bobby Lashley. Both have had really good years. Both, are going to be top draft picks, I believe, tomorrow night. I can't imagine they wouldn't. Same for the Street Profits. I think that they'll go in one of the first rounds tomorrow night, as will the Usos. Maybe split them up since they have, sort of started to exhaust what they can get out of the two of them feuding together, and the Usos need to move on with their tribal chief storyline that they have. Street Profits probably need some new opponents as well. I think it's when we get back to the middle of our draft, Doug. I think at the top we were doing all right, but I had Keith Lee, you had Sami Zayn. I think it's safe to say that you maybe had a better year there than I did, but not by much.
Just slightly, because at least Sammy was on TV.
Sammy was on TV, not racking up a lot of wins.
No, but he was on TV, so there's that.
Then we go to our next round. We got the same thing going on. Ricochet and Kevin Owens, two incredibly talented guys that we would build around. Neither of them had very good years. I'd say, again, you may come out slightly ahead of me here in that Kevin Owens was on TV a little more. But
I was going to say, Steen got a little bit more TV time than Ricochet. So Zelena Vega on your list was gone because she got fired.
Yeah, but before she got brought back.
Before she got brought back, Alexa Bliss was handed the Fiend gimmick. I've activated my Amazon device. I won't say that name again.
Wow. Bianca Belair, Doug, I'm going to give myself some credit there that I had a good call out at the time. She wasn't doing very much. She was just in these vignettes where they were showing her, doing all this athletic stuff and winning, relay races and the like. Obviously, she's had one of the biggest years that you could have for a call-up. So I give myself some credit for that one. Doug, how did Aleister Black do?
Hey, man, he's doing great. I mean, he's had a banner year once he was released, and they screwed up his non-complete clause, and he got to go to AEW. He's doing great.
I mean, you saw it, and obviously AEW saw it. WWE did not see it for whatever reasons. And maybe the same for my next to last pick that you see on this list. I mean, I had faith that Dominik Dijakovic was going to have a big year. Obviously, they turned him into T-Bone or T-Bar or T-Zone or whatever and completely messed that up. Bayley, that's a great women's pick on your side. Unfortunately, her year was marred by injury. So,
right.
Seth Rollins has had a heck of a year. That was my final pick. Doug, how's Mustafa Ali doing over on the?
Hey, man, not much worse than Seth Rollins there. I mean, I think they're neck and neck this year. I mean, both of them are. I can't believe it, man. I don't know.
Overall, I don't feel like we did too terrible. A lot of those folks on the list, particularly high up in the draft when we were just thinking as business people and not just picking our favorites, we were picking folks at the time. We set down our rules that we were going to, obviously go for champions. You want the champ on your show. Most of those folks actually did have pretty good years. I was looking with that when I wanted to do this to end our draft coverage. I thought, there's going to be a lot of folks that are going to just be gone at awful years. It was actually better than I thought. Our upper draft picks all did well, and the lower were a bit of a mixed bag, but not because of our choices, but really because of WWE's creative choices.
Yes,
I would say. But folks, what do you think? What do you think so far of the WWE draft? Who do you think is going to go tomorrow? Was there anything in particular you were upset about? Drop us a comment, whether you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube. Let us know what you think.
Let us know. Absolutely. Kevin, we ready for the big finish?
I'm ready if you are, Doug.
Oh, I am ready. I'm ready. I'm ready.
You want to start with the botch of the week?
I will start with the botch of the week. It's a little bit of an old angry Mark rant I started at the beginning of this segment or the previous segment with New Day. Come on, man. Come on. You you can do better. You don't have to break them up. You don't have to have the babyface be the lone wolf. New Day rocks. Literally, New Day rocks. They work as a heel unit. They work as a face unit. You can bring the series when you need them to. You did not need to separate them after. It's like you gave us something nice and then you took it away and you broke it right in front of us. That's what you did, WWE, with New Day. Here's this nice, awesome toy. I'm going to break it now and then throw it at you.
Being privileged enough to be at Extreme Rules last week, I can say firsthand, there was not a mixed reaction. There was not a reduced reaction. There was a huge reaction in the arena for New Day. People are not tired of seeing this act together while they're still hot and really just recently reunited. I mean, it's, WWE loves nostalgia and bringing things back together. And so it's a good story to have Big E get his championship with his New Day brothers there at his side and the crowd still into it. And you're right. They break it.
Yeah. And then they just broke it and then threw it at us. Yeah. There's your toy.
My botch of the week was going to be from Extreme Rules. I was going to, had it in my notes and everything to talk about Top Rope Gate and the breaking of the However, then MJF had to go bringing dead relatives back into a promo again. And I hate to give the very talented MJF my botch of the week 2 weeks running. But he's too good to have to do the cheap heat. And Darby Allin's uncle, I'm presuming that's a real story when he says that his uncle died in a drunk driving accident. And that's why Darby's straight edge. And I mean, if all that is true, and I presume that it is, it's not entertaining. He doesn't need to do that. He is very dislikable without having to go the cheap route. You know what I mean? His parents were, at the what was the New York show or one of the shows, the big shows, maybe it was the pay-per-view not too long ago. MJF's parents were in the crowd with the t-shirts that we're MJF's mom and dad and we hate him too or something. Yeah. So I mean, he's extremely dislikable. You don't have to cross that line into ooh territory, and that just gets ooh. So if he keeps doing it, you're going to be my botch of the week every week. So yeah, not good.
You've been warned, MJF. You're going to be Kevin's botch of the week if you keep cutting those very distasteful promos.
You don't want that. We all know what happens to people that can stay on my list in the wrestling industry.
Oh my God, you have a list.
Got a list.
You have a lot of lists, actually. If we're all being honest, Kevin has tons of lists daily, but that's more for another show.
Oh, Doug, your performer of the week.
Man, let me tell you, what I've been missing in wrestling, Kevin, is a good home invasion angle. In mainstream wrestling, Seth Rollins is the greatest villain because he is so comically over the top. I want to give him my wrestling Joker awards. Like, here, you're the Joker. You're this maniacal cartoon villain. Here you go. Because I'm not talking like Heath Ledger Joker. I'm talking like Mark Hamill voice acting Batman the Animated Series Joker. Just this comedic over the top villain, and I love it. Yep. So Seth Rollins, performer of the week. And if nothing even having ring, all character work this week for me.
If you haven't caught his episode of the Broken Skull Sessions with Stone Cold, it's very much worth catching because he talks a lot about finally finding a character for himself other than just being Seth Rollins. And apparently Becky gets credit for all those great suits. Apparently she hooked him up with her designer. So
really?
Yes. Yeah, because according to him, the man dresses pretty funky in real life. And so the person that makes a lot of her stuff, she had the idea for the over-the-top suits. And once he started putting them on, he felt like a different person. And more.
Yes, I love it.
It's a great conversation, as Stone Cold has with a lot of people, but great call out. The home invasion angle was fantastic. I loved it too.
Right.
My performer of the week, Doug, I'm going for, I'm giving credit where it's due because I gave them, I cut them down many times over the last year over AEW's Dark program. But kudos to AEW Dark because I think they're finally starting to get it right. My complaint was always sort of twofold. It was way too long, and it was nothing but squash matches, and it wasn't doing anything to like be like a developmental or get folks over in the way that they acted as if it was. Also, I think a problem that the show had was that they were always filming it either before or after Dynamite, and so you either had folks that had not yet gotten their seats and didn't care, and it looks the same as all the rest of your programming, or everyone saw the main event and went home and didn't care. It's like 205 Live when they used to try to film it after Smackdown. The reactions just, it did not benefit the show, and it wasn't entertaining. Well, it's entertaining. They several weeks ago, they moved it to a studio setting. So it looks completely different than everything else that AEW is doing, which is good. When there's so much programming on, if it looks different, it's good. They're actually filming at Universal, where Impact used to tape their shows. And as such, it looks a lot more like the old school WCW Saturday Night or NWA Power, and old marks like me who still kind of get nostalgic every time you see a studio wrestling set up. I'm instantly more interested. Yes, it's still mostly squash matches, but it's a lot closer to that hour. It's in a more interesting setting, and because of that, AEW Dark has become really entertaining to watch. The main event is usually competitive and good. I'm fine for 2 or 3 squash matches to get over some underutilized talent, and then give me a competitive main event and do it in front of a studio audience that makes me think of the old Mid-Atlantic territory. Win-win all the way around. So AEW Dark is suddenly watchable, folks, if you've not been tuning in.
All right, man. How about your match of the week?
Match of the week, Doug. I know last week I had said that my favorite match that I had at Extreme Rules was probably the tag match. And even though I liked the women's contest, I was not happy with the finish. Yeah. I went back and, of course, I watched the whole thing to see how it looked on TV and all that. Taking away the fact that there was too many non-finishes in general on the show, it is a match that did give us a return of Sasha Banks. And when I go back and watch it, I realized just work weight wise and how hot the crowd was, being split almost 50-50 between the two women. The fact that they have not really competed much against each other. You got an up-and-comer like Bianca, who basically had a rise at NXT and then on the main roster while Becky was out. So it seems like a fresh set of opponents. That's my match of the week. And I'm happy that maybe WWE sees it too. They didn't give us a clean finish. They have barely started this program, and it looks like they'll probably move Becky over to where they moved Bianca, so that this must continue in my mind because there's way more to do here, and I look forward to it. That's my match of the week.
So, I really want to give some love to AEW this week, because we have had a very WWE heavy show, but I gotta fall more right in line with you, man. I went back and watched the matches, being in a much better physical and mental state of mind after recovering from my 7mm kidney stuff and all the treatment that goes along with getting it purged from my body. So I'm doing much better this week, and was able to go back and watch some stuff that I definitely missed, because the Street Profits match was I'm still not the biggest Street Profits fan, but it was definitely good. But absolutely, the Sasha's return, Becky, Bianca, that's definitely a match of the week for me too, man.
Well, I will then give some AEW love because since we did our review show last week, when we do our review show, we just go straight to the reviews. We don't have our segment here. So if you want to go back to last week, Doug, I don't think you're going to disagree with me. You have to go watch Daniel Bryan and Kenny Omega. Again, another match that didn't have a finish, but there's a reason for that down the line. But my gosh, if you're wondering if any layoff did anything to affect the skills of Bryan Danielson, wow, that match is probably my match of the last several weeks. I mean, there's your AEW love. Go back and watch that if you missed it, because it is a treat from start to finish.
It really, really, even and nothing to take away from Nick Jackson as a solo competitor, But you really think of the Young Bucks, Matt and Nick Jackson together, but the Danielson and Nick Jackson solo match on Rampage, another just great showcase for Bryan Danielson.
Yeah, I think he must be feeling it again, that creative freedom. I worry a bit about him having that, as I'm sure you do as well.
I do. Every time he does a tope suicida, I'm like, oh, come on, man.
But we got to see Kenny and Bryan one more time on pay-per-view, and just let me open up my wallet, because, man, I want to see that again with a conclusive finish and more time.
Absolutely. That is definitely a shut up and take my money situation. So,
and Doug, I before we go, you may not know this, because you, as you said, you like the Vince McMahon these things, but in case you didn't see Doug, I'm not going to be around next week, so we're going to take a week off.
Okay, so we don't have a show next week. Okay.
I knew it would be news to you. But I would have told him, folks, before we got in the air. But as he said, he was running in right at the clock. So,
I had the feed up and ready to go like 10 minutes beforehand, because I knew I had things to do. So I wanted to let you know I was here in my beautiful new studio.
Well, that's right. We should have noted that, and it is a beautiful new studio, and that we will not be in next week, but we will be back, Doug, in 2 weeks. And this it's going to be a big show, because we gave them a month to work out the bugs. We gave them a month to make whatever changes they want to make. So we are doing a deep dive into NXT 2.0, what's working, what we still don't like, who we like. They're throwing a lot at us, and a lot of these folks actually have been really eye-catching, and a lot have been kind of eye-rolling. So we're going to separate those two things. Yeah. So whatever you all been thinking about with the new NXT, bring those opinions with you, and we'll talk about them, argue about them in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, though.
Because I don't have to prep for a show next week. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Stay safe. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Good night.